Hey folks, what's going on? It's Julian Mussine McQueen from the Million Person Project. Today we're going to be talking about your story and how you can use it to connect to any audience. I use the term audience loosely. Your story can play a really important role in allowing you to better communicate about your work with one person or 1,000 people. It can be in a meeting with a couple funders or potential investors. It could be on the bus with somebody you strike up a conversation with, or it could be from the stage and in front of thousands of people. And it, of course, can even be used on your website or in writing or video. I'm talking about the power of your personal narrative to connect to the audiences that you want to speak to about the work that you're most passionate and excited about. Yesterday, Heather talked about your story and the importance of really getting in touch with your story for yourself and really feeling connected to it. And it's when you feel connected and you feel the emotion and the spirit and the energy in your story that it's really effective in connecting with the audience. Today, we're just going to talk about that audience piece and why that is and what are some of the important things to think about as you begin to craft your narrative. So stories, as you know, the Million Person Project, we're all about them. And the reason is that stories are one of the oldest ways that humans learn. And if you're talking about getting someone excited about your project, getting them to participate in your work, then you are wanting to convince them to change their actions, right? So if I am running an organization and I need volunteers and I have the opportunity to talk to people who have come to an event or who have come to an event that I'm a part of, then I want them to make a change. And a story is a great way to help them to see why making that change can be an important part of their life and something that they might want to consider. The other really important piece of this puzzle is, of course, using your personal narrative, using your personal background and experience to shed a light on what you're doing and why. And most importantly, why are you the person who is well suited to be doing this work? What is connecting you to the work? What is the passion behind what you're doing? I know this is something I've heard a lot when people are talking about investors and businesses, that a lot of time investors, they're investing in the leader. They're investing in the person in front of them and their belief in that person being someone who they can trust, who's hardworking, who's innovative, who's willing to take chances, who's smart, right? So yes, there's an idea. Yes, there might be a product or a service. Yes, there might be a campaign. But oftentimes when people are deciding whether they want to work with you, whether they want to invest in you, they're doing it based on who you are and who they believe you to be. So how can you understand your own personal narrative and use that to shape what people understand about who you are and who they understand you to be? And this is really about using your story to uncover the values that guide and drive your work. That's the power of personal narrative. It's not about telling a lionizing story about who you are and how awesome you are. It's about revealing how you've gone on a journey, how your values have been shaped, and how those values inform and influence the work that you do and how you do it. And there's great power in having the willingness and the ability to share that. When people feel like they really get a sense of who you are, when they really have a sense of why you're doing what you do, then they're much more willing to step into the fold with you. And that's ultimately what this is about. We work with change makers because we want people to expand their influence and expand their ability to do the good work and the awesome things that they're doing in the world. And story is just a great way to do that. And coming at it from another angle, it's really important to recognize that if you're not using your story, if you're not willing to stand up in who you are and share a little bit about what brings you to the table, then you really are playing with one hand behind your back and you're leaving a lot of opportunity and a lot of power on the table. Your story is your power. We say that a lot, but it's really true. You will feel it inside, as Heather was just talking about in the last video that we did. There's a power that you will feel in sharing your story, but that power transfers and it transmits to your audience, right? And everyone can feel that, and that's what inspires and moves people to action. And it's not just about inspiration, it's about moving people to action. And your story plays a huge role in that. So if you're not using your story, you may have an awesome service, you may have an awesome idea, project, campaign, product, whatever it may be, and that's great. You want that, right? And that may be enough for some people. But I promise you, when you tie that to a powerful personal narrative that you feel completely in touch with, that you feel like is real, where you feel like you're speaking from your heart, sharing your truth, it expands the power of what you're trying to do in a huge way. And when you partner a great idea and strong inspiration with a narrative that really helps people to understand the why and understands who you are, then you're really moving. And that's what we see. We see that in our work. One of the reasons I got into this is because I was on the other end of this story. A bunch of years ago, in 2007, I had an opportunity to see Van Jones speak at a fundraiser. And he told a story, and he talked about his experience working in Oakland and spending a lot of time in Marin and the disparities, Marin County here in California, Oakland, California. And he saw a lot of the disparities in these places that were very close together, and he started to wrestle with why that was, and he started to wrestle with what could be some of the opportunities and the solutions that we see in Marin around the environment. How might that be applied to a place like Oakland, and how that might be something that can lift up the community? How might we invest in those green opportunities to create opportunities for all communities? He told this story. He used his personal narrative in the telling of that story. I was able to really get a sense of what he'd gone through and how he came to this idea. And how he came to understand that there was really an opportunity to develop an inclusive green economy strong enough to lift people out of poverty. He used his story to do that. And what's more, I want to make a point around, he used his story to provide context and to give me as an individual a sense of who he was and why he cared so much. And he also left space for me in that story, right? I saw myself in that story. I felt like I might have something to contribute to his vision. And I was so moved by this that I left just dumbfounded, and I left with a commitment to work with Van and to work at Green for All. And not just, I want to work in that field. I want to work there. That's where I want to be. That's how powerful his message was. That's how effective he was in his storytelling. I decided I wanted to work there, and about a year later, I did work there, and I worked there for close to 9 years. For a long time, and a lot of what I've learned through story has been from seeing Van and people like Van utilize their story. And as I've gotten to cultivate mine, I've gotten to experience the power of connection there. And I've talked about my work in a lot of different contexts, in front of a lot of different audiences. And when I am willing and able and make the choice, which sometimes can feel like a challenging choice, or like I don't know if there's time or space, but when I make the choice to share my story and stand in that, when I feel that power, when I ground into that power, and when I share from my heart, that is always when I get the most response. That's always when I get the most people coming up after I'm done speaking. That's always when I get the most business cards. It's always when I have the most resonance and feel like I connected in a way that really allowed people to see how they could be a part of what I'm trying to do. I've experienced it firsthand. It's really true. And that's all we're trying to do. And we've seen it with a number of our clients as well. When folks really stand in their story, they've been doing great work, and then all of a sudden, boom, it expands in a major way because they started showing up in a bigger way. They started showing up more completely in their power. And as I said, your story is your power, and if you're not using it, you are leaving some of your power on the table. And so we don't want you to do that. So for this training, we're really thinking about your audience and how do you understand who you're speaking to and why. So there's a few pieces of the puzzle here, and there's a worksheet that goes along with this, and it's very simple. So we're talking about your story, but we want to be very clear about who you're talking to and why. And a lot of times we work with people and they're like, well, I have a pretty universal message. I think the whole world could use it. I want everybody to use it. That's great. That's good to know and good to understand, and that's a great vision to have. But the more clarity you can have around who is the person you want to be affected by your message, who is the person you want to reach, the better. The more that you can find some clarity around what is really the change you're trying to create in the world, and giving some color to that, being really clear about that, it allows you to have a clarity of message and really make some decisions around what part of your narrative you want to share. Right? When you have clarity around your audience, it allows you to understand which piece of your narrative is all your story. And but there's choices to be made around which narrative threads to pull on that will really connect to the people that are your people, right? This is about you finding your folks, and about your folks being able to see you in your story, being able to see you in the work that you do, and being able to see themselves as part of what you're doing. So understanding your audience is essential to understanding which threads you want to share so that you attract not just anybody, but the right folks. And you start there. And ultimately, if your message is resonant enough, it'll reach all kinds of other folks. But you want to be having clarity around who you want to reach. Who are the folks that you want to be a part of your project or that you want to reach with your message? So starting with that, thinking about a specific person, If it's a real person, all the better. Maybe it's an archetype. Maybe it's a type of person. I want to reach a young person, 15 to 18 years old, who's maybe struggled with school a little bit, but has a lot of potential, right? Creating that kind of picture. I want to talk to somebody who is in the Bay Area, working in the tech sector, but is really wanting to do more with their time and energy than just work in the tech sector. They're really looking for creative outlets for what they're doing, right? That's another example. So that's the first thing you want to ask yourself. Then you want to ask yourself, what are some of their core beliefs? What might be some of the problems that they're feeling or associating with that are related to your issue or topic? So what is it that they're facing? What do you understand about who they are? What do you understand about what they care about? And what might you understand about issues that they might be facing that could be getting in the way of them connecting with the work that you're doing, right? So this is related to your work, your project. What's getting in the way of them? Related to that, what's getting in the way of them connecting with what you're doing, or maybe the issue area, right? It might not be specifically your project yet. The other piece of this is, how do you want to shift their belief around that problem or around the issue? So there's a belief system at play, and you're telling a story to help shift their belief in some way. It's really important how you want to, you're trying to understand how people are thinking differently about your topic and your issue, right? So how is that shifting? And then the final piece of the puzzle is, what's the action, right? So it's great to change the way you think about something, but how are they actually changing their actions? How are they showing up differently in the world based on what you're saying, and what is it that you want them to do specifically? So there's this another call for specificity there. Just as we want to be very clear about who we want to talk to, we also want to be very clear about what we're asking them to do. So grab the worksheet and check that out and think about your audience, and take a step back and think about who you want to be speaking to and why. And when you're able to do that, then you will be able to find a real clarity around your message, which will take time, but a clarity around what parts of your story will most resonate with that audience that you want most to reach. And so that's it for today, and thank you. And just remember, your story is your power. Don't be afraid to use it. It takes courage, it takes time, it takes investing in yourself and reflection, but it is so worth it, and it brings so much more to your work and so much more to your ability to communicate about it, so much more to be inspired yourself and to get others inspired about whatever it is you want to do. So I really encourage you in whatever ways you can to explore that and find ways to use your story to support your work and help your message be bigger and broader. All right? Thank you so much. Bye-bye.